What you're about to watch will contain minor spoilers for the following works of fiction, and some major spoilers for a handful of them. But don't worry, I'll give you a warning and a timestamp to skip when we get close to the major ones. You might be looking at this place and thinking, what game is this? A first-person view of Death Stranding's America? Some sci-fi game I haven't heard of? Believe it or not, this is a place that really exists on Earth right now. Slender, southern Iceland. The high iron content of the basalt rocks beneath your feet give it that inky visage. The patches of verdant foliage provide contrast. The fog over the horizon makes you feel isolated from the rest of humanity. If you were actually here, you might feel the urge to take a picture and capture this almost alien world. This is a game called Lushfoil Photography Sim, and it allows you to just be in these wondrous locations all across the planet. Italy, France, Japan, Australia, Nepal, Northern England, China. The game simulates these places to a gluttonous degree. If you crank up the settings, you can almost fall into your monitor. We've all climbed to the top of a mountain in Breath of the Wild and gone, wow. But when you hike this strangely dark and snowy trail on Mount Everest, then turn at a switchback and realize, oh my god, I'm above the clouds. Oh my god, I was just walking through the clouds. You are reminded of the majesty of the very real world we occupy, and you want to hold on to that feeling. So you whip out your camera and snap a photo. And the game does a lovely job of teaching you how to do this well, by the way. I've never taken a photography class, and though I have a nice camera, messing with the settings makes me feel like a toddler trying to land a helicopter.
What the fuck is Mav?
But through a handful of simple tutorials and well-timed photo ops, I now know about things like ISO, aperture, shutter speed. I quickly became obsessed with one trick the game taught me. Have you ever taken a blurry photo? You ever wonder why if your phone is taking a picture at night, it asks you to hold still? I learned that when you don't have much light, your phone keeps the shutter open for longer to expose more light to the lens. If you nudge the camera, it makes this blur. But with a proper camera, if you intentionally, manually use a slower shutter speed and move while you take the picture, you can portray movement with the photo. So, if I spin while I take this picture of the stars, I get this. If I snap a long exposure pic of these fireflies, I catch the paths they traveled. Lushfoil carefully rewires your brain to see the world differently. You don't just see landscapes and trees and statues and lakes, you notice that the mountain is reflected in the water. You discover that from certain angles, an inanimate object becomes a moment in time. You find ways to make pixels become heartbeats. Needless to say, I like the game. But at some point, I found this camera and snapped this picture. And something about it was almost, I don't know. It just bothered me how nostalgic it felt despite me never being here. If you had to guess, what year do you think this clip I'm showing you right now was taken from? My guess would be late 90s, early 2000s. If we fast forward a bit and start up here, does this help you decide what, hang on, what was that? That woman is wearing wireless earbuds. What you're watching is a video that was recorded on a Sony CCD TRV-58, a camcorder built in 2001. It is a clip of New York in 2024 filmed with a camera from the same year that the city faced its darkest hour. The Ground Zero Memorial is captured as well as the streets nearly 23 years after the tragedy, and there is just something so incredibly uncanny about watching this. It's a similar feeling you might get from seeing New York in 4K 60 FPS remastered and colored from the year 1945. Police officers directing traffic, Chevrolet Style Masters and Ford Super Deluxes prancing down the streets, all strangely crisp and artificially sharpened. What I find fascinating about these clips and this picture is how the medium used to portray a moment in time can betray that moment in time. Practically all of us watching this clip of a horse and buggy didn't live in that era. Sure, we know how Hollywood recreates it, we know that this era happened in color, but it doesn't feel old unless it's filmed like this. This is how we imagine 1945. This is how we imagine 2001. This is how we imagine today. This is how we imagine Mexico. Film and photography have such a powerful effect on us because it's not just what is illustrated that matters, it's the eyes we see it through. There's a quote from Words of Radiance, the second book in the Stormlight Archive, that I think illustrates this nicely. And don't worry, this will have effectively zero real spoilers, but Shalyn, one of the main characters, we found out very early on, has a photographic memory. Oftentimes, she will take a mental image of someone or something and then sketch it later. At one point, she's remembering someone she hasn't seen in a while and she decides to sketch them. But this time, it reads, "The drawing didn't depict a single faithful memory, not as Shalyn usually did them. This was a recreation of what she remembered, an interpretation that was not exact. Shalyn was proud of it, as she'd captured Jasna's contradictions. Contradictions, those were what made people real." Jasna exhausted, yet somehow still strong, stronger even because of the vulnerability she revealed. Jasna terrified, yet also brave. For one allowed the other to exist. This is a nice picture, but I think what makes this one speak to me more is that, paradoxically, the lower quality, the inexactness, makes it feel more real than any gargantuan resolution could. It's not a perfectly accurate portrayal, it's not a 4K remastered portal into a place, it's not trying to be the real thing. It looks like a picture of a place instead of the place itself, which implies that a human experienced it and snapped this. When we look at New York today through these eyes, through this lens, there's almost this parallel world feel to it. It's almost like you're peeking into another slightly different timeline where New York never faced that dark hour, or where cameras haven't advanced to the point they are now. But speaking of advancing to points, what the hell is this video about? What have I titled it? Capturing the infinite, every Aerith, every Midgar all at once, the decoherence of outer wilds, the endless lives you will never live? Well, depending on some very existentially threatening subject matter we'll get to in a bit, it could be any and all of these, depending on what universe you're in. And what the algorithm likes best. What I want to talk about today is a handful of media that have in some way recreated this feeling for me, this nostalgia for a place I have never been. This sense that I'm peeking through a keyhole into a different world where a different me is living a different life. This embarrassment I feel for thinking silly things like, I wonder if my dreams are overlapping with the dreams of my parallel universe self. And that very real regret that I think all of us have crossed paths with, because after all, what if that universe's version of you is happier than this one? We're also going to trigger a lot of Outer Wilds fans. It's going to be great. So sink deep into your seat. Make yourself stupidly comfortable, because today I want to make you think. I want to make you feel. I want to make your skin smooth and buttery. This video is sponsored by Henson Shaving. Do you remember this video I did a few years back about shiny Pokemon? In it, I talked about something called the endowment effect, a well-researched and supported phenomena people experience where, once we own something, we are much more likely to value it above what it's really worth. This is why so many products offer a free trial. Once you've tried it, it becomes psychologically yours and you're less likely to give it up, even if there is a cheaper option available. The Henson razor is that cheaper option. Up front, it costs roughly 7 times a typical cartridge razor, but the replacement blades cost about 25 times less, meaning it pays for itself 6 months in. In 2 years, it's $265 cheaper. In 20, $2,612. You see, the shaving industry, like many, is designed to create dependency, not value. How can they keep you coming back to buy more? But the Henson razor is designed strictly around longevity and value. This strange little guy was crafted by aerospace machinists, all with the intent to solve the irritation problem. You don't need more blades, you need a better angle. And this isn't just a claim. Clinical imaging shows lower skin irritation with the Henson razor compared to mainstream razors. And my experience with it only echoes these findings. This should be the norm. It's shocking just how much needless waste drugstore razors create when you really think about it. But I won't oversell this, you're smart enough to see my point. Use my link in the description and use my code DarylTalksGames to get 100 blades free with the purchase of a razor. Thanks again to Henson for the sponsor. Now back to the show. A handful of friends are getting together for a dinner party. One by one, they file into the kitchen and begin reminiscing and talking about the comet that is supposed to be passing over tonight. This girl is a bit upset because her boyfriend's ex is going to be here. This lady is trying to peddle her alternative medicine onto people. This guy, Mike, was on a TV show, like 4 seasons of it, and the ex has seen that TV show, but for some reason, she has no recollection of seeing him in it. I'm sure that is a meaningless detail just thrown in there for no reason. As the dinner continues, their conversation ranges from telling old stories to catching up on life. This girl again, Emily, laments that she almost had a wonderful new job as a dancer, but passed up on it despite all the work she did to make it happen. It's a bummer. She seems to regret it. But as their voices echo into the evening,
We have an expert.
Oh shit. Oh my god. Honey,
things begin to grow very strange. Before the power outage, Hugh's cell phone screen randomly shatters. Something similar happened to Emily's on the way here. No one has cell service, and after they crack some glow sticks and walk outside to see the comet, they realize that it is eerily dark outside, far darker than it should be. The only other light they see is from a house a few blocks down. Hugh and Amir go to check it out and ask if they can borrow the neighbor's phone, but they take much longer than they should. Panic begins to rise. The energy in the room is a combustible swirl of denial that anything is wrong and insistence that something is very wrong. But finally, they return. Hugh is bloodied. Amir is carrying a lockbox that he claims he saw Hugh put down. Hugh saw something in the neighbor's house, but he won't say it out loud. The box contains a ping pong paddle and pictures of everyone in the room with numbers on the back, including a selfie of Amir that he has never taken. Hugh begins to write this note before heading back to the other house, but then...
Oh shit! There's someone out there! What? There's someone out there!
Have the door?
Where's the window?
Please.
Walking away.
What is it, babe?
Hey there. Don't mean to freak you guys out, but we just wanted to borrow your phone for 5 minutes tops.
It quickly becomes clear what Hugh saw and the only possible explanation for this evening. This is a film called Coherence, and what follows from this point is a movie that is truly unsettling. I'll save the major spoilers for much later and warn you when we get to them, but you slowly discover that the other houses in the neighborhood contain other dinner parties just like this one with these exact people in them. The comet has caused some sort of tangling of the fabric of space-time where each house contains a slightly different version of this group. And it makes for some uncanny moments like when Emily and her boyfriend Kevin have an exchange outside and even embrace, only for seconds later for them to both simultaneously realize that their stories don't match and that they are not from the same reality. There is no scream or running or fighting, it's just this chilling stare before they back away. There is no correct reaction to meeting your parallel universe partner. And the implications of all of this slowly begin to creep up on you. How would you tell your friend apart from their parallel universe self? Why does Mike insist that this house they find when wandering around is his when the others don't recognize it?
Mike, this isn't right. Mike, this is not your house.
Why didn't she know that Mike was in that show despite seeing all 4 seasons of it? This was before the blackout. When did the reality bending begin? Other questions like these haunt you the more you ponder the premise, and the same goes for the characters. You see them unravel at the possibilities, and it's what makes this film work. And I really like how the medium of crossing over into these new realities is something grounded and simple that we can understand. It's not some wormhole or portal gun or quantum leap, it's just walking over into another house. You could simply stumble upon it and eerily realize you're technically in the right place and yet infinitely far from home. It's seamless, it's accidental, just like our next example. I'm going to say something now that's going to upset a lot of Outer Wilds fans. Slender Man did it first. If you look to the sky in Outer Wilds, you might catch a glimpse of this moon. And don't worry, no major spoilers for Outer Wilds here. This section is going to reveal something you discover in like the first 20 minutes of the game. If you look to the sky in Outer Wilds, you might catch a glimpse of this moon. If you look away and look back, it's gone. If you blink, it's gone. If you get too close to it and can't see all of it, it goes to the 7-Eleven to get cigarettes. Basically, once you no longer have eyes on it, it is suddenly orbiting a different planet, almost as if it's jumping between realities. It's for these reasons the Harthians call it the Quantum Moon. It works almost exactly like Slender, and in case you were too young to know about that game, please God, am I really that old? You trounce through this forest to collect 8 pages, all while avoiding the Slender Man. And like the Quantum Moon, Slender Man's location is based entirely on your perception of him. If you see him, he will not move. It's only once you look away that he moves. The horror comes from this catch. Unlike the Quantum Moon, you can't just stare at him to keep him in place. The longer you look, the more this happens, and eventually it'll cause a game over. The game scratches the same itches like a Bird Box or Hush. You suddenly can't use one of your senses, and that's the tinder to light the spookiness. Now, is Slender Man quantum like the moon, or does he just only move when you aren't looking? What would that movement even look like? There's a reason we were all amazed at this simple premise all those years ago. But the reason I bring both of these up is that one, they're just like Coherence in that they're accidental. You carelessly happen upon these changes, and that slight incongruity is unsettling. Two, and more importantly, they both rely entirely on your perception of them. Just like a certain lens can add an uncanny nostalgia to a subject, your viewpoint of these phenomena determines their entire nature. From a creative standpoint, you could make the argument that all of these things share a common root, and I'll argue that it's the old adage of Schrödinger's cat being written into fiction. If you somehow haven't heard of it, here's the skinny. Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger once came up with this thought experiment. You put a cat in a box. You put a vial of poison in a box. You put a radioactive atom that might decay in the box. If the atom decays, the poison is released, the cat does not survive. If the atom does not decay, the poison is not released, and the cat survives and faces the wrong direction. When you close the box, quantum physics says that one, the atom is not either decayed or stable, it is in fact both at once in a superposition. Sort of like the quantum moon is kind of at every planet simultaneously. Two, since the cat and the vial are dependent upon the state of the atom, they are entangled. Therefore, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. It's only when you come along and look inside the box that the two realities collapse and the cat becomes either dead or alive. Most people reference this as a way to support the von Neumann-Winger interpretation, that simply the act of observation by a conscious entity, as opposed to the physical interaction itself, is what causes something to transition from a superposition of states to a single definite state. It's very much a does a tree fall in the woods if no one is there to see it perspective. And in the 1900s, many physicists saw it this way. The Copenhagen interpretation posited nearly the same thing. And clearly this interpretation made it into science fiction.
Do you guys know what Schrödinger's cat is?
I'm allergic.
In Alan Wake and Control, there was this place tucked between space-time called the Ocean View Motel. But it manifests as completely different locations depending on who is viewing it. If it's Jessie, it's the average of all the roadside motels she stayed at over the years. If it's Alan, it's a luxurious 5-star hotel like he would typically stay in. If it's Saga, it's what she expects it to be based on what she heard about it earlier in the game. If everyone in Coherence just stays inside, this is the only reality they see. They only cross over if they check the other houses. Slender Man can only move closer to you because you can't visually keep him pinned in one state. The quantum moon is in a superposition of every orbit in this system. It's only because you happen to look at it that it collapses into your current reality. What's hilarious is that this wasn't the point Schrödinger was trying to make. The cat experiment was to point out the absurdity of this school of thought by making a life-size example of the experiment that created this line of thinking. The superposition of particles is one thing, but a cat being in this mystical state and only collapsing whenever we look at it? It's absurd. And with time, many of the physicists that proposed these viewpoints agreed that our perspective is not near as important to reality as the actual physical process is. Now, what's truly fascinating is that, whoa there partner, we've got a disclaimer for this section. I was a psychology major for a reason. I picked a soft science. There are physics experts out there that don't fully understand quantum mechanics. So rest assured, I have zero authority to talk about this. Which is why I'm going to talk about it. I have stared at this stupid double slit bullshit for hours. I have read about it and watched Veritasium videos and listened to Neil Tyson on like 50 podcasts, and I still don't fucking understand it. But what physicists seem to be rock solid on is that there are two things about Schrödinger's cats that are very real. One is superposition. If this particle can somehow go through both slits at once, then this atom can also be both decayed and not decayed at once. The second is entanglement. The cat's life is still entangled with that atom. When we check the box, we become entangled with the outcome. Our observation of the cat doesn't determine the results determine our observation. Meaning, there are now two simultaneous realities. One where the outcome is meowing at us, one where we are extremely bummed, and probably going to jail for actually doing this experiment. One where I decided to get a haircut for this video, and one where I didn't. Because superposition and entanglement both exist, physicists think that multiple worlds do in fact exist. And the implications when you think back to Outer Wilds are particularly cool, because this means when you look away and the moon disappears, you aren't determining its location. Its location is determining you. If you look back and it's gone, it hasn't jumped realities. You have. You are now in a slightly different timeline, one where this moon is orbiting this planet instead of that one where it has always orbited this one. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense for the physics of Outer Wilds. If a real moon is suddenly added to a real planet, the gravitational pull would completely change its behavior, its orbit, its rotation speed, its tide. But if the moon has always been on the planet we're on in this timeline, there would never be any massive changes. You would never notice anything drastic because the only real change is you being there. And there are a million factors I'm not thinking about. I'm sure it's quantum physics, throw me a freaking bone here. But without spoiling anything, solving the quantum moon is a massive part of actually finishing the game. Landing on it is something you'll try to do for quite some time. And to very deliberately wax poetic, I think there's something ironic about the contrast between how easily you can jump between timelines here and how impossible it is to land in the one you want. The timeline where you can set foot on the quantum moon. And that contrast is what drives every single example we're about to talk about. There will be spoilers of varying degrees of severity. I'll mark each one with a timestamp, but don't feel bad if you have to skip any. They kind of all illustrate the same thing in different ways. Now, let's talk about the Midnight Library. Nora Seed is unhappy. On the day that we find her, she is late for work and is then fired from her job at a music store. Afterwards, she runs into an ex-bandmate named Ravi, who still blames her for quitting right before their chance at a major record deal. She was having panic attacks about performing, and all these years later, Ravi and her brother Joe, who was also in the band, haven't gotten over it. She is subsequently reminded of another of her failures, her decision to quit swimming, where apparently she had Olympic potential. Again, stress got in the way, just as it got in the way of her engagement to Dan a few years back. She breaks up with him 2 days before the wedding at the realization that Dan wants kids. Desperately seeking warmth in the face of a thunderous symphony of regret, she texts her former best friend Izzy, who has moved away to Australia only to be left on red. Oh, and her cat was hit by a car. This is actually the reason she was late for work in the first place. With nowhere left to turn, Nora writes a note to anyone who may find it, and then swallows a fatal handful of pills. But this is not the end. It's the 23rd page of the book. Nora wakes up in a foggy, ethereal expanse with a building in front of her. The clock is at midnight, and the hands do not move. Her watch, also at midnight, does not move. Inside the building are endless shuffling bookshelves, each one containing a different version of Nora's life. Here inside the Midnight Library, Nora will open a tsunami of books and step into the shoes of countless other versions of herself. She's told to simply start living those lives, and as soon as one becomes disappointing, she will return here to keep on searching. Once she finds one that she is truly happy in, she will forget the Midnight Library, and that timeline will become her new home. And throughout the book, Nora carefully addresses each and every one of her regrets. In one timeline, she marries Dan. In another, she becomes an Olympic swimmer. In another, she doesn't quit the band. It's incredible. She has fans. People are changed by her. She has inspired millions. She matters here. But unfortunately, with that success comes stalkers and paparazzi and rehab and floods of exhaustion. Things that Nora finds this version of herself has endured, but not her brother, who overdoses dealing with the gravity of it all. And this is true of every single timeline she tries. There is always a catch. As a swimmer, she's even more depressed than her original timeline. When she marries Dan, eventually he cheats on her. Plus, things still aren't right with Robbie and Joe because she still quits the band in this timeline. There are even more snags and conundrums in the universes I'm not telling you about. Every timeline has a problem. There is no perfect set of decisions she could have made. Trying out new universes is easy. Finding one without any form of despair is impossible. Toward the end of Coherence, once the horror of the situation has run its course, an idea makes itself comfortable in Emily's mind. If every house in this neighborhood is a possible outcome, what if she finds the house where everyone has not turned on each other? What if she finds the house where Kevin is not hung up on his ex? What if she finds the timeline where she decides to take that dancing job? Can she turn this nightmare into a sweet dream? And so she sneaks out and searches the neighborhood. The more she finds, the more she literally takes her pick of the timeline she wants to be in, the sadder it gets. As she glances into these other houses, the same thing is happening in different forms. Fingers are pointed, voices are raised, drastic action is taken. She watches as the possibilities rot and fester into fear and paranoia. This phenomena is not malicious. The comet just happens. It's the people that turn this into a thriller. But no one ever has the idea to simply talk to their other selves and learn about what is different there. There is no discussion of trading lives or trying to understand themselves better through another universe's version of them. The possibilities destroy these people. And you can see this begin to dawn on Emily. But when she finds that perfect untouched house where no one has left, everyone seems happy. This version of her and Kevin look correct. This girl looks like the Emily she wishes she was. And seeing this, understanding that this is what she's fighting for, this is a reality built not on regret but upon resolve, she turns to the comet and all at once emotions wash over her. She knows what she has to do now. She knows how everyone can finally find peace.
She's in here. We were looking for you.
You got away from us.
I did.
Coherence on the surface is a haunting premise that serves as a thrill ride with a clever glimpse into the bitterness we have likely all felt at the paths our lives have taken. But I think what separates it from our other examples so far is that it illustrates not just the pointlessness of marinating on regret and trying to escape from it, but also the destructive nature of doing so. There is something paralyzing about infinity, something deceivingly intoxicating about exploring every possible path our lives can take. but that endlessness can tear us apart at our very seams.
Careful now. That which lies ahead does not yet exist.
If you've played the original Final Fantasy VII, you unquestionably still have a tiny scar somewhere on your soul from seeing Aerith's fate at the hands of Sephiroth. It was a gut-wrenching twist that only helped cement the game as one of the very best in the FF series. It's been so long, and so many people have played, and so many still anguish when they look back on it, that when FF7 Remake was announced, the discussion of Aerith's death was deafening. How will they make that perfectly horrible moment even more perfectly horrible? But the ending to Remake completely changed that conversation. In the game's final moments, we find Zack still alive with Cloud just outside of Midgar. This is not how the original sequence of events takes place. In the original game and in Crisis Core, Zack dies here. Cloud makes it out, and it's Zack's death that entirely shapes who Cloud is for a massive portion of the game. And yet, here he is. This time, he defeats the Shinra forces that killed him. He's headed to Midgar, Cloud in tow. And you get this beautiful shot where you can simultaneously see the timeline you're in and this parallel one. Zack and Aerith, fingertips yet an infinity apart. A look on each of their faces suggests that the other just came to mind for some reason. What this final act of Remake does is open the door to completely new outcomes. Suddenly this series may not be strictly a remake, it may be something more. The conversation shifts as the implications sink in. Does Aerith get to live? And Rebirth teases this repeatedly, in subtle ways early on, like when Zack's timeline seems to echo into ours, and in some much less subtle ways in the final act. Every time we find Zack, he is in a slightly different variation of Midgar depending on his decisions. In one, he chooses to go to Hojo and find a cure for Cloud, and fails. In another, he goes to save Biggs, and fails. In another, he can't decide. Here, Sephiroth Samurai jacks him into another universe. Meanwhile, Cloud and Aerith wake up in one of these timelines while Zack is out. We learn that if you look at the sky, you'll find that this reality is crumbling. The end of the world is imminent. They go on a bit of an awkward date that sees you make some decisions. Which gift will you choose? Which candy will you buy? Which pose will you take to convince the photographer to take your picture? All of this culminates with this timeline's Aerith giving Cloud the white materia and pushing him back into his original world. So clearly parallel worlds interacting is on the table here. Which brings us that iconic sequence from '97 is portrayed much busier here. Initially, Cloud is able to intercept Sephiroth's blow, but moments later... Wait, no, Sephiroth did stab her. You get this uncanny series of shots, one where Cloud silently cries, another where it appears he is grieving out loud as he does in the original game, one where Aerith is stainless and unconscious, another where she is covered in blood, one where she wakes up to comfort Cloud, another where he holds her lifeless hand to his face. These moments simultaneously overlap like a faulty VCR tape re-recording new footage over old. It's a stylistic choice we've seen flashes of throughout Remake and Rebirth, of events that haven't happened yet to these characters, but we, the audience, would recognize. When the others arrive, it is clear that they are not seeing this sequence of events spliced together. Aerith is dead here. This leads to a very long boss fight that sees Zack and Cloud team up, Aerith temporarily peek in from another timeline, and ultimately everyone grieving Aerith's death except for Cloud, who is almost cold about it.
We'd best get moving.
Yep. Sounds good.
But through his eyes, Aerith is still here. And in the final scene, it becomes clear that he's communicating with the one from the timeline where she does in fact live. He's not crazy. At least about this. Aerith and Zack seem to sense one another in Remake, and Nanaki senses Aerith here.
Aerith?
Much like the Quantum Moon, these places exist simultaneously, and somehow, despite Aerith's death in our timeline, Cloud can almost blink and suddenly see the world as it is in the universe adjacent to this one. Like Nora, like Emily, like you, accessing other worlds is not out of the question. But again, the tragedy of this is that there is no perfect timeline. Because if he is indeed peeking into the world where Aerith is still with us,
You have to promise not to look up.
her living in that timeline will not save her. That world is doomed to die as well.
Don't look up.
Well, now I gotta look.
Cloud gets an extended farewell. We get an extended farewell. But perhaps the only timeline where they can save the planet is the one where Aerith dies. Just like in the original. It has to be this way. Oh my god. I'm going to say something that's going to upset a lot of Rebirth fans. Steins Gate did it first. Trying to understand all of this, I've watched this ending so many times over that I'm beginning to miss the proton double slit thing. But eventually, I kept getting snagged on this line from Sephiroth right after he attacks Aerith.
And so it begins. A confluence of worlds and emotions. Loss, chief among them. It engulfs fleeting moments of joy, transforming them into rage, sadness, hatred.
I think what Sephiroth is referring to here and what is going on in this admittedly bloated final act is not just the branching timelines that the cast is navigating to save the world, but the futility of lamenting every possible choice. The game has been subtly making this clear, not just in Sephiroth's cryptic ranting, but also with the way Zack is used here. Many people point out his irrelevance to the plot as a critique of the game, but I think it was completely intentional. His dramatic return changed very little, if anything. I think it speaks volumes that the version of him that was indecisive and did nothing actually made the most impact, since he eventually pops out the other end of that portal to help Cloud fight. Even with tiny things like how each decision you make on that date ends with your choice not mattering. You don't get the gift you want. You don't get the candy you want. No matter the pose, you don't get the picture you want. The visions from the Arbiters and the things Cloud sees in certain moments don't mean anything to these characters yet. They haven't happened yet, but they mean something to us. Sephiroth is speaking to the collective zeitgeist of the fan base.
That which lies ahead does not yet exist.
Remake and Rebirth are both dangled in front of us as a way to potentially repair the regrets of the past, an opportunity to find a happier ending for these faces we cherish so deeply. In these moments, it is directly speaking to those of us who have sat with this tragedy for over 20 years. This journey may be filmed with a different camera, but it is still the same timeline from 20 years ago. It opens old wounds under the guise of nostalgia. It is a metaphor for life. Being confronted with what ifs and pondering ways your life could have gone differently creates a billion hypotheticals and a billion feelings all at once that converge on your psyche.
Loss, chief among them.
It engulfs fleeting moments of joy in your life, distracting you, begging for your attention, transforming those specks of happiness
into rage, sadness, hatred.
In the pursuit of everything, you lose sight of the now. You'll never see the truth
with such clouded eyes.
Evelyn is having a very busy day. Today, she has to finish preparing all of her receipts for her meeting with the IRS this afternoon, ensure that her elderly father is taken care of, deal with the customers of her laundromat, continue to advertise her Chinese New Year party, try and get her silly husband Wayman to help, and figure out how to tell her father that her daughter Joy is gay without her world exploding. He is from a different generation after all, how is that gonna go? All while navigating her relationship with a daughter who might hate her and a husband who, unbeknownst to her, has filled out divorce papers. Hectic energy is paired with a side of genuine sadness in this opening scene. Regret abounds. But while in the elevator at the IRS building, something happens.
There's no time to explain. Hold this.
All at once, Evelyn is told she has to help save the multiverse, and it's absurd. She thinks Wayman has lost his mind, but then upon seeing her life flash before her eyes, she's engrossed by the choices that have led her to this point. Things then begin to get very wacky. We learn that in one of the many possible universes out there, the Alphaverse, they learn how to timeline jump between one version of yourself and another. Alpha Evelyn is the one who made the discovery, and Alpha Wayman is here to guide our Evelyn. Unfortunately, there is someone who was so gifted at jumping that they are now a threat to themselves and every other universe. Jobu Tupaki, Evelyn's own daughter from the Alphaverse. She is causing death and suffering in every timeline because the knowledge of every universe and every single possibility has destroyed her mind and her entire sense of morality. And Jobu is a fascinating character study. The idea that seeing every world there is would not lead to this peaceful godlike understanding, but instead that all of that noise would completely obliterate any shred of meaning. It's not something Evelyn can relate to yet because as she learns to jump, it only provides clarity about her life's meaning. The first real alternate reality she sees is one where she listens to her father, doesn't run away with Wayman, and becomes a kung fu master and eventually a movie star. It's beautiful, it's spectacular, it's a far cry from her life climbing a mountain of receipts in a failing laundromat. She uses the skills from that timeline to get her and Wayman to safety. And then you get this quiet little moment where she's so lost in the wonder of that life that she tells Wayman she shouldn't have gone with him all those years ago. You can see the pain wash across his face. But this is just an ounce of what Jobu Tupaki feels every second of every day. She is burdened with the shrieking contrast of each of these possibilities grating against one another with each and every heartbeat. And she is seeking out Evelyn in every timeline because she wants to share this pain with someone.
Not a single moment will go by without every other universe screaming for your attention. Never fully there, just a lifetime of fractured moments, contradictions, and confusion. With only a few specks of time where anything actually makes any sense.
And eventually, Joy does share that pain. There's this quote I really like from Alan Wake 2. It's this line spoken by Alice, Alan's wife, about photography.
Fear of the dark is really just fear of what could be, that vast, paralyzing ocean. But photography can freeze reality in a snapshot, put a cage around the infinite and capture it.
I also really like this minor side quest in FF7 Rebirth where you're supposed to take pictures of these constellations. But if you want, you can sneakily snap a picture of Aerith when she's not looking. If you do, eventually she'll take notice and...
Whoa.
I know you snuck a shot of me earlier.
You'll get a picture of them together, and it's just a cute little item you can have, completely there to make you love these two even more. And I think there's a reason that you get a picture here, but the game ensures you don't get one in the spoilery section from earlier. I think there is a reason our side of the story is frozen in a snapshot. I think there is a reason the memories of Joy and Evelyn arguing through tears are shot just like the memories of Evelyn doing the same thing with her father. Same camera, different time. Same story, different people. Nostalgic, but not different. I think there is a reason numbered photographs are used to help the dinner party keep grips on which house is theirs. I think there is a reason, well, some spoilers are best left to be discovered. I know I've quoted a lot of stuff in this video, but if you'll indulge me, I have one more I'd like to read for you. In the Rockstar timeline, Nora is being interviewed about her life and what has led her to this moment. And having lived numerous lives up to this point, she says, I think it's easy to imagine
there are easier paths. But maybe there are no easy paths. There are just paths. In one life, I might be married. In another, I might be working in a shop. In another, I might have said yes to this cute guy that asked me out for a coffee. Every second of every day, we are entering a new universe. And we spend so much time wishing our lives were different, comparing ourselves to other people and to other versions of ourselves, when really, most lives contain degrees of good and degrees of bad. It's easy while trapped in one life to imagine that times of sadness or tragedy or failure or fear are a result of that particular existence, that is a byproduct of living a certain way rather than simply living. I mean, it would have made things a lot easier if we understood that there was no way of living that can immunize you against sadness, and that sadness is intrinsically part of the fabric of happiness. You can't have one without the other.
Contradictions. Those were what made people real. Sephiroth invokes endless possibility as a way to snuff out fleeting moments of happiness. Joy cites fractured regrets as noise that drowns out life and only leaves a few specks of time where anything makes sense. But it's because of that infinity and because of every road Evelyn didn't take that she has a daughter to cut through that noise for, a reason to cherish those few specks of time and choose this timeline over her regrets. And Joy doesn't understand this. Why pick being her mother despite everything Evelyn can possibly be? But Evelyn turns this on her. Why then, despite every path Joy could take, did she still seek out her mother through all of it? The contradiction is what makes her real. It's what makes us real. The things we never did, the places we never went, the infinite lives we never lived are what forged our little reality into being. And it's choosing to see those regrets as a gift that gives us meaning. In that famed timeline where Evelyn has it all, she meets Waymond again, the same one she said no to all those years ago. And after spending the evening together, this Waymond, who has never seen the endless worlds Evelyn has, simply says,
如果有来生，我还是会选择和你一起报税，开始一点。
What if there is another you out there that wishes it could be in your universe? You see, reality is all about perception. You can close your eyes and imagine 1 million different possibilities. You can step into a new timeline in every single moment. You can let the weight of infinity paralyze you. But it's always a picture that captures the infinite, that reminds you to treasure the happy little specks that make sense, that tethers you to you. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way here to the end. I need an intervention. My videos cannot keep being this damn long, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. If you did and want to see more work like it, hit that subscribe button and maybe like the video, comment something down below. You know how YouTube works. And if you want to get your name on screen like these delightful people as well as a heap of bonus content, why not drop $1 a month on my Patreon page? Link down below, and a massive thanks to this month's featured patrons. Angelo Benedetti, Sky Hong, Drake Hinst, Akito, Akuma Shinara, Poggers Champion, James Burton, and Riviere. Thanks again for watching, take care, and have yourself a damn good one.
Thank goodness that's over. Oh God, the backlog's 2 months away!